Hello, and welcome to On Good Faith, a program sponsored by the Cape Cod Council of Churches. The Cape Cod Council of Churches is a group of Christian churches working together to make witness to faith in Jesus Christ, and to enable there to be healing, and to enable also betterment for the lives of all. I am the Reverend Jonathan Onquist, pastor of First Lutheran Church in West Barnstable, part of the Council of Churches, and it has been my honor and privilege to host On Good Faith. Today's guests are here for part two of a program reporting on a visit they took with a Lutheran delegation to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, to Palestine. A group of Christians seeking to assist us in efforts to educate ourselves and to understand better the situation, the striving for peace in the Holy Land. Peace. Can it be accomplished? Our guests, Nancy Tinkham, Carolyn Nelson, Ernest Ryden, and the quest, a quest for peace. There is confrontation and hope amidst that quest, and Pastor Ryden took pictures, a good video, as he was traveling there. I would like to share that video with us and comments about this experience. Pastor Ryden?
Thank you. The first Christians were in Galilee, Jerusalem, and then Samaria. These 2,000-year-old roots still live in souls of many in Palestine today. The Palestinian town of Beit Sahor is 80% Christian. Abdullah Watt is a Lutheran Christian who can trace his roots back 600 years. He speaks from the campus of the Lutheran
My name is
school
Abdullah Watt.
where he serves.
I was the deputy headmaster of this school for 25 years until I retired last year. But I miss this place. This place is here in my heart. I have been here for all my life. I mean, as a student and as a teacher, as a deputy headmaster.
What do you say when people tell you that all Israel wants is land that is empty?
Yes. I tell them we belong to the land. I can trace my grandfathers for more than 600 years. I think we belong to the land. God wants me to stay here, in my land. He doesn't want me to be a refugee anywhere in the world. So I think this is my promised land, as it is any Jewish promised land. So we can live together and build bridges of understanding, of love together, instead of building this wall that will separate people. Building bridges is much more important and more useful than building walls to isolate the people and widen the gap between the two people.
The gray wall can be seen snaking its way like a ribbon, not only separating Palestinians from Jews, but encircling whole cities and holding the citizens prisoners inside their own towns. On this 25-foot concrete wall, the imprisoned Palestinian citizens use graffiti to attribute the inspiration for this wall to the evil wall that was built by the Nazis around the infamous Warsaw Ghetto in Poland. Next we move to Ramallah, where the Lutherans have another
الأولى على الفرع نجلاء هيثم معلم 90-19. الأوائل من الفرع العلمي. الثالث أشرف خميس طنوس 93. الثاني أمجد كامل سلوس 93.
While the graduation ceremony was going on in Ramallah, the Israelis were using American-made helicopters and rockets to kill Palestinian citizens on the Gaza Strip. In sympathetic protest, young boys in Ramallah retaliated with stones. The Israelis shot back rubber bullets and tear gas.
أشرف خميس طنوس 93
Some Palestinian children watch alongside the soldiers. These children know that they are safe because their friends are only throwing rocks at the soldiers.
And we just long for peace to prevail in the land. Peace with justice. That's what we need. People think that we are terrorists. We are not. We are friendly people. We are hospitable people. We are very simple people. We are generous people. We just lack peace. Peace in the land of peace. So pray for us that one day we'll have peace in the land of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernest. As he concluded there, what we want is peace. As you know from that experience, there are obstacles to peace, but there are hopes also for peace. I'd like to move from Ernest to Nancy, dealing with the obstacles and the hopes.
I'd like just to help us understand a little bit better what is going on and what the obstacles are. Hope is there, but the obstacles are so big. First, I'd like to show a picture of the map of the general area so we know what we're talking about. The first map will show Israel. It's the large map that shows the cities that you'll recognize when you see the picture. The whole area is the one that's in problem. The picture will show the territory that you hear in the news all the time, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank. The map of there we're seeing now shows the Mediterranean and an insert showing a smaller section, but the larger map showing Israel. And we landed, when we went on our trip, we landed in Tel Aviv and then traveled across the gold-colored section over to Jerusalem, where we stayed our first 5 nights. If we could look at the next map, it shows just Israel. And Israel is compared to New Hampshire in size, just to have a feel for what we're talking about. And the West Bank is in the center section there. And that's where Jerusalem is, and Bethlehem, and the beloved biblical sites that we did visit on the trip. On your left, in the very small section, is the Gaza Strip, and that's where most of the confrontation is taking place right now. And our next picture, next map will show, you see little dots all over there. They're little diamond-shaped markings. And those are to define where the settlements are going. And that's something else that we hear in the news all the time, the settlements. That is Palestinian territory, the white marking on the map. But all those little diamond marks are markings of settlements. And to better understand what a settlement is, our next picture has it's a cartoon that was in our Cape Cod paper. And I want to share it with you because to me, it's very, well, I just wonder, is that what you think of when you hear the word settlement? Do you think of shacks? Do you think just small little clusters of temporary housing? Is that what is going up all over that country of Israel and Palestine? It's not so. I think that's our first impression of what a settlement would be, just an encampment. But if we could see the next picture, it's one that I took from Bethlehem. We're on the main street in Bethlehem. And over in the back of a store, I could get this full view of activity on the adjacent hill. This is all Palestinian territory, land, and that huge cluster of 4- and 5-story cement buildings, that makes up a settlement. It's really a city. This particular one, I don't know the capacity. I know that we were shown one where they said 40,000 homes are within that settlement.
These are Israeli settlements.
These are Israeli settlements coming in on Palestinian land. And I think when you talk about peace, I'd like to envision if you were putting up a fence in your yard, if you had a problem with your neighbor and you decided the best solution for you would be to put up a wall or a fence, some kind of a barricade between your property and your neighbor's. You'd be very careful to put that fence or that wall on your property. You wouldn't think of putting it on the neighbor's property. I sure wouldn't. But that's what's going on over there. The settlements are coming in on Palestinian land, and then they're protecting the settlements with the wall. So the wall is taking more land. And when you talk about peace, that's not going to help peace. That's not a way to create friendly relationships.
That's a good point. Not at all a way to create good relationships, and also when we want peace, that is not the route to peace. I agree with that. And now a book that you've had, Carolyn, you wanted to share a little bit about that in regards to this search for peace and that experience with a Lutheran pastor himself in Palestine.
Yes, in Bethlehem, actually.
In Bethlehem.
His name is Mitri Rahib, and I have his book here, and I am going to quote from it. This is a picture of him. We met with him once or twice. I also was able to attend his Sunday services. We divided in groups and went to different services. I've been very taken by what he said and by what he's written. And he writes in this book of a obstacle to peace, and the obstacle is news coverage. And to me, it's very one-sided. We hear when there's a suicide bomber, we hear the destruction they make, but how often do we hear how many Palestinians have died from Israeli armament, or how many homes have been destroyed, how many people have lost their homes? It is, the Palestinians do argue that the root cause of the conflict is Israeli occupation of their land and what this wall is doing to their lives, how it is destroying their lives in many sense. The Israeli insist that the problem is the Palestinian terrorism and violence, and in a way that's right too. But what do we usually see when we turn on our television? I think we usually see, at least I do, the destruction of the suicide bombers and not the destruction of the land and the number of injured and killed of the Palestinians. As an example of this, I'd like to relate what Pastor Rahib told a story of. It's not a story, it's a true story of what happened in 2000. It was right after the beginning of the second Intifada. And life in Bethlehem had just become very terrifying. The Israeli Defense Forces were stationed around the outskirts of Bethlehem. There was no curfew, which does happen often and did happen in 2000 there for several months. But the residents were still very afraid. As soon as the sun went down, everyone went home. Life just was a standstill. And as often would happen every evening, young Palestinian men at the outskirts of the city would just fire bullets at settlements. They couldn't hit anyone, they weren't that close, but they did. I believe that their frustration comes from a sense of helplessness. They're growing up in an occupied country with no future. Unemployment is 70% at least. But so they get frustrated. These are young men, and not that I'm saying they should shoot bullets, but it would also give a chance for the Israeli Defense Forces justify their fighting back, sending bombs, tanks with artillery armament into neighborhoods, into Palestinian neighborhoods, destroying homes, or at least, and in some ways, just damaging them. But many, many people became homeless. Every night this would happen. But in this setting, Rahib and his church decided it was almost Advent and Ramadan, and they needed to give people some hope, and they needed to do something to bring light into this dark city. Advent and Ramadan both have symbols of light, and the decision was made to have a candlelight march. Contacting other churches, they started the candlelight march on a Sunday evening. They didn't know if anyone would dare to come, but it was, all the churches in the area were informed. They started it in front of the Lutheran church in Bethlehem called the Christmas Lutheran Church. And the choir sang, and bells rang on the church, and then they very silently walked with their candles to the Greek Catholic Church with the same things happening, a choir and bells. They carried a banner which said, yes, right? It said, I'm sorry, the light of right, not the power of might. And this was their only banner. And then after the Greek Catholic Church, they went to the Syrian Orthodox Church, an Islamic mosque, and ended at Market Square at the Church of the Nativity. You know how surprised they were? Over 2,500 people came.
But it was not reported.
It was not reported. No, it was not reported.
Peaceful event.
A peaceful event that was not
Searching for peace was not reported by the media.
by anyone. No. Pastor Rahib was told unless there's bloodshed, unless stones are flying, unless buses are burned, it would never make the news. So this message of hope, and this message of, I think, to all of us, of what the Palestinians were doing, could not be heard by anyone.
The frustration of the Palestinian community in that respect is evident because there's no media picking up anything, even positive.
It seems that way,
elements of their
yes.
effort.
It's very hard to get news from the other side.
And the media is controlled by the Israelis.
Yeah. Nancy, you were going to take us to some efforts that have seemed positive to you.
Oh, I like to talk about hope.
Okay.
I think that we have a wonderful picture of a group of young men in a vocational school that is very hopeful. As Carolyn said, the unemployment is over 70%, but this school is teaching these young men trades. There's electronics, there's car repair, building, woodworking, plumbing, and air conditioning and computers. But it's a residential program as well as a day program. It's just the faces on these boys say hope. These are the young men who need hope. They need to be directed, they need a focus. And the director of that school is the exact right person for this. She has her advanced degree in chemical engineering. However, she's teaching anger management. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful expression of hope. I have another picture of a small group of boys in a boys' home. This is a residential home for orphan boys in Beit Jala, and there are 40 boys in the home, and they're learning all the good values. And it was an exciting visit to walk through and just see how they love their home and the support that they have there. Another expression of bringing in hope. And Carolyn, I think, is going to talk about the school, or I'll talk about the next picture. Is a group in one of the schools. Again, you could look at this and think that you're home in a classroom. Everything is being done there to give these youngsters a beautiful start, and also experience in learning and working with Muslims and Christians together. It's a beautiful expression of hope.
Hope is the one bright spot that we all can hold on to, and I trust that the Palestinians and the Israeli communities have hope. But the desire for hope comes into conflict in how to achieve that sought-after peace.
Right.
Exactly.
And one thing that shows that is the fact that the wall is coming between the non-commuting students and the school. With the commuting students and the school. The non-commuting, they're already at the school, but the commuting students are going to be intersected by the wall, as are the patients who need to get to the Lutheran hospital that is in the outskirts of Jerusalem.
And also the teachers. If the teachers can't get there can't be a school.
Carolyn, you had talked about that cultural center you were going to speak on?
I was going to speak on the cultural center. It's part of the Lutheran Church in Jerusalem. Every church has some wonderful programs to reach out to their people. The cultural center is to bring, as Pastor Rahib said, to bring a little bit of normalcy into people's lives, to have a place where they can do artwork and learn art, crafts, and sell them in the gift shop. It's a beautiful building that was bombed out in 2002, but when we got there, with the help of Scandinavian and German churches, the place had been rebuilt, and it's just gorgeous. But other ways of hope, other ways to bring about peace, hopefully, is we were also able to have dinner with people in Palestine. And I have a picture of two of the members of our group, myself being one, the pictures being taken by the third one, of the family in Palestine who invited us for a noon meal after church. A wonderful family, a wonderful way to get to know other people in other situations and understand a little bit of what they are going through. I would also like to talk about other groups that are there. Being Lutheran, and visiting the Lutheran churches of the Synod there, we saw, I guess, mainly Lutheran programs, but there are many, many other people there. The UN is there. We saw a huge van come in Hebron with what did they have in the
rice?
With rice in the van that could be distributed to people.
And the World Council of Churches too is very significantly present there.
Right, the World Council of Churches has an international group that accompany people. They would live in an area where there's apt to be violence and help children walk through the checkpoint, because sometimes children are harassed, or grown-ups too, at the checkpoint. And but the one group we really met with were Christian Peacemakers team. Jerry Levine is a Christian peacemaker. It's an ecumenical group. It's worldwide, and they support nonviolent activities. He showed us through Hebron, and also introduced us to a powerful woman who stands for nonviolence. She has started in this very troubled place. She has started a preschool on her rooftop and a kindergarten Somehow she got the money to be able to get a playground, and she is just was a real message of hope for
Well,
us.
you're saying there are situations, there are glimpses of hope amidst this turbulent situation.
Absolutely.
Did you feel in danger there when you were visiting?
I
you
did not.
You did not feel the danger yourself?
No.
But the search, what is the quote from Pastor Yunan?
This is from the bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jerusalem and Palestine, Bishop Yunan. He was speaking to another group, but I'd like to quote him. "I want to assure you that we in the churches are committed to justice, peace, and reconciliation." He believes that the dream of a two-state solution and a shared Jerusalem will become reality sooner or later. Again, he says, the odds are against us, but we cannot think only of negative things. We must remain hopeful and positive in order to build bridges of justice, peace, and reconciliation.
We must remain hopeful and positive in order to build bridges. I think that's a profound statement and a challenging statement
It
for
is.
we of the Christian community, of the world community here, in that kind of a situation where there is such confrontation, but there is still such real hope. And his statement to assure that we of the Christian church are committed to justice, peace, and reconciliation. Justice, peace, and reconciliation. Well, thank you very much, Nancy and Carolyn and Pastor Ryden Ernest, for your offering, and your trip must have been a marvelous experience that you will not soon, if ever, forget. And I hope and pray that the seeds of what you have learned will enable us to know more about this experience and the chance that hope can come to flower in a future that can bring peace. It can be something we can achieve, and it can be achieved in Palestine, in Jerusalem, in what we call the place of peace, the Holy Land.